The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, headquarters. It's also the home for Autism Live. Thrilled to be here with you. This is our first show on a Thursday in the year 2016. We had a bumpy start. I had a bumpy start last week to the year. We had been so sick over the holiday break, and my son had a little bit of a relapse, and so I wasn't here on Thursday. So this is the first one, and I'm excited to be here, thrilled to be with you guys. We're going to be live for the next 2 hours, and we hope that you will participate with us because the entire point of this show is to be interactive. It doesn't work if I'm just a talking head sitting here at the desk. It doesn't work. It's a conversation between all of us around the world. I do want to hear what you guys have to say. Kelby's going to show you some of the different ways that you can converse with us and also include some of the different ways that you can watch the show, because there are many ways that you can watch the show. I'm going to remind you while he does that our homepage is autism-live.com. Lots to do when you go there. To watch the show, all you have to do, there's a computer screen. It looks like a desktop, right? And on the computer screen, all you have to do is click on the triangle, depending on who your server is and what your system is. It's in different places, so I'm not going to bother telling you where, but there's a triangle someplace. If you click that, if it's the live show, it'll immediately start up at the beginning. If it's a more recently recorded live show, then the last one recorded, it will start at the beginning. But you'll be able to fast forward, you'll be able to rewind, you'll be able to pause. And in fact, if you want to watch any one of the most recent 100 shows, there is a library of them that exist on the memo icon up in the upper left-hand corner of that computer screen. And again, the perk of watching us when we're recorded is you can fast forward, rewind, pause, do all those wonderful things. But the perk of watching when we're live is to the side of the computer screen. And it's a series of white boxes, and they are active all the time. So you can write in a question whenever you'd like to. It's just that we won't be able to have the dialogue back and forth. But if you put your cursor in the box that says your question, you start typing, you hit enter, it shows up here on the screen. And if we're live, I have an opportunity to interact with you. If you do it at another time, I can still interact the next time we come back and do a live show. It really, really helps, though, when you specifically reference what it is that you're talking about. Because so many times I'll come in and there'll be a message saying, what is she talking about? Or where did she get that information? Or does he have that study? How can I reach him? And I'm in pronoun hell when that happens because I don't know which him you're talking about. It could be from yesterday's show or it could be from 35 shows ago. I just don't know. And as I tell you frequently on this show that I gave up mind reading to be an autism mom. So you have to help me out. Let me know specifically, I'm watching the thing about such and such, you're talking to so-and-so, and then launch into your question. That helps me a lot. When you're asking about resources, please remember to tell us what the biggest major city is that you're close to, so that helps us to know what kind of resources might be available to you. Now, if you're in the United States and the biggest major city is in a different state, make sure that you note that for us as well. Tell us both. Say, I'm in New Jersey, but I'm closest to New York City, right? Because unfortunately, it wears me out, but the resources are different in different states. I really hope as we move closer to primaries and the caucus is in less than 2 weeks, I really hope that whoever ends up being in charge of the United States understands how debilitating it is for families that it is not a level playing ground. And I know we were this close to having autism reform in all 50 states, and it didn't happen because of one individual who is no longer in office. So because it was left to Kathleen Sebelius, who was the Health and Human Services Secretary. She's not there anymore, and the new secretary does not have the ability to make that choice again. But let's hope that whoever gets elected president understands how awesome it would be if we had that in all 50 states. Until then, we'll deal with it state by state and find you resources that are close to you and that are doable. Okay? So write in and tell us. All right, I do like to remind you at the start of every show that while we have many experts on the show, I am not one of them. I have shared that last week was the 10th anniversary of when my son was diagnosed with autism, so I do consider myself a veteran now. This is new status for me, but not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. So remember that. As I said, I am an autism mom, son diagnosed 10 years ago. I'm so grateful. I just couldn't be more grateful for the progress that we have seen and the help and support that we have gotten along the way, including from those of you at home. And I want to give back to that. That's why I'm here. That's why it's so important for me to help you to get to the resources that you so richly deserve. And by the way, let's not forget that when I say you, I am talking to our entire autism community. And to me, that is all the individuals who have that diagnosis or are seeking that diagnosis first and foremost. But it includes, and I don't think that they should be discounted, the parents who want that progress for their kiddos, whatever age they are, whether they are 6 months old or whether they're 100 years old. You know, we don't stop being their parents and wanting what is rightfully theirs, which is the progress. But it also includes the grandparents and the uncles and the aunts and the practitioners and all of the medical field and the teachers who choose to say, I want to understand. We've got somebody, I haven't before included barbers in that, but the truth of the matter is that it includes everybody who says, I want to know more and I want to be of service and I want to be able to help these individuals. And we have one of those individuals that we have an interview with today that we're going to be sharing with you in just a little while. But in any case, welcome, welcome, welcome. Just don't mistake me for an expert. All right. Having said that, we like to start every show with our little workout, our little warm-up, something we refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out, what are these people talking about? And why are they talking about it? And why are they sucking up the air and taking my time, right? If it's not going to help me, if it's not going to help me to get to the progress and not going to help me help my child get to the progress, why are we bothering, right? But a lot of times if we dig deep into the jargon, we see, oh, wow, that really could help me. So today's jargon term, I believe this is the first time that we've ever done it on the show, is phonemic awareness. I know, doesn't your brain just go, oh, I don't even want to know. I don't even want to know what that is. It sounds horrible, and my day is busy. But I will tell you that when you hear about it, you might go, oh, now wait a second. This makes a little bit of sense to me. So let's take a look at what our actual definition of phonemic awareness is. Phonemic awareness, a subset of phonological awareness in which listeners are able to hear, identify, and manipulate phonemes, the smallest units of sound that can differentiate meaning. And ladies and gentlemen, this is why we do the jargon of the day. Because if I don't know what phonemic awareness is, then I probably don't know what a subset of phonological awareness is. I'm just saying. Although we get little hints in here, ability to hear, identify, and manipulate, there's the word again, phonemes, but then it tells us it's the smallest unit of sound that can differentiate meaning. So let's move on to our working definition, see if we can't put this together a little bit. Mine's not going to come up. Phonemic awareness, the ability, to translate sounds into meaning. All right, so have you ever seen this or experienced this? As a former teacher, I I always used to think it was interesting that there were some kids in the classroom that you would say, take out your book and turn to page 35, right? And there are some kids who would just do it, right? They'd reach under their desk, they'd pull out their book, and and there it is, right? Then there were other kids who were busy doing something else, so they didn't hear it, right? They had something else going on, and then they learned through observation, and they went, oh, everybody's taking out their book, but they didn't even hear it, right? But then there's the kids that it almost seemed like you said it, and it went, and it hung in the air, hung in the air, hung in the air, and then it got to them a little bit later than it got to other kids, right? And so then, and it wasn't that they learned it through observation, but that they got it a little bit later. And I used to call that like the tape delay. And I've experienced that in my life too. If I'm concentrating on something, if I've got something else going on and you say something to me, I hear it. I just choose to process it a little bit later. Now for me, it's a choice. Like I can pay attention and choose to process it in the moment. But what if somebody didn't have that choice? What if they didn't have the choice to process it any sooner? What if it took them a little bit longer to process? And what if part of the reason why they were having to take a little bit longer to process was because they were having to decode what got said? We talked about this a little bit the other day on Tuesday because our jargon was auditory processing, and we talked about an auditory processing delay. Well, one of the things that we know is that sometimes kids don't have the ability to process phonemes with the speed that the rest of us do. And that often to a person who doesn't understand that, it looks like disobedience. It looks like not being able to focus. But in a lot of cases, it's not. There's a set of lessons in skills, and there are lessons otherwhere, but not many places. But there's a really great set of lessons in skills. I will tell you it's in the academic curriculum because sometimes it's hard to find, where would that be? It's in the academic curriculum. And it's about phonemic awareness, and there are exercises to do so that kids can pick apart the sounds and hear them. Now, I used to teach English, and worse, I used to teach speech. So there are things in this jargon that they're just terms that live inside me because I've known them for so long. But there are things like diphthongs and triphthongs. And I know you're like, what? Stop with the jargon. I know. But when we put two vowels together and we make the sounds for them, it can get confusing. And especially when you add in accents, it can get more confusing. Like, how do you say the word O-U-R? Hour. There is a diphthong there, right? And how do you say H-O-U-R? Hour. And how do you differentiate between when someone is saying O-U-R or H-O-U-R, right? If you're new to language and you're acquiring language, it would be easy to mess those up. And if you have a really hard time identifying those sounds when they're put together, it's going to take you even longer to be able to decode that. What we find is that when we identify a child who has issues with phonemic awareness, and we work on those things and strengthen them with skills, teachers report that all of a sudden the child is paying more attention, that the child is more obedient. It isn't that the child is paying more attention. It isn't that the child is more obedient. It's that the child understood it quicker. Imagine how horrifying it would be for a child if you've constantly been accused of not paying attention, not caring, being disobedient when you didn't understand what was being said to you. It's as though it's in another language. So phonemic awareness is a very important thing to look at. If you have a little one and you're noticing at home, and by the way, it isn't just little ones. Like you might have a 17-year-old at home, you're talking to them and there's a tape delay. Might be interesting, you can do a 14-day free trial of skills, might be interesting to go in and do a couple of the exercises and see if that's part of what's going on. Fascinating area of awareness, phonemic awareness. Okay, that's our jargon for the day. Moving on, we always have a question for the day, and Kelby, my thing is all jammed up and not working, so I'm only off of you. Our question of the day we ask you guys, hopefully we'll have a second later on Facebook to tune in. Our question for you is, what do you do when you can't understand what someone is saying? This is a really important question. I mentioned this on Tuesday that I am militant about saying to somebody, I don't know what you just said. If I don't understand because somebody has an accent, and boy, people get so uptight about that, right? Somebody has an accent and I didn't understand what they said, I'll say, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. And everybody's like, oh, like, is that politically correct? I don't know about you, but I want to understand if somebody is wasting the breath to say something to me, I want to know what they're saying. There's a famous story of, one of my very best of besties friends. When I met her, she was she was engaged to one of my best guy friends from college, and we went to a whole bunch of us, because we wanted to meet her. We went to this very loud restaurant, very famous loud restaurant in Los Angeles, and I'm trying to get to know her, and I'm sitting across the table from her, and at one point she said to me, "Hey Shannon, before you came, did you remember your name?" And I said, I'm sorry, I didn't catch what you said. And she said, oh, did you remember? And I couldn't hear it, right? So I said, you're going to have to say it louder. I'm a little deaf. Can you like move your lips a little more? And she started to get red in the face. She goes, no, it's not a problem. I said, no. I want to hear what you're saying. Say it to me. And she said it again, and she kind of mumbled again, but now she's feeling all self-conscious. And I literally stood up at the table and said, everyone, be quiet. She's trying to say something to me and I can't hear it. So now everybody turns to look at her. She's total red face now. And she says, I just wanted to know, did you remember to name your name before you came? And she looks like she's almost in tears. And now I turned to my friend next to me and I said, I cannot understand what she's saying. What is she saying to me? And everybody in the restaurant is watching us now. This is how the length that I will go to. And my friend said, I think she's messing with you. And I said, what? What do you mean? And she said, oh, it's just a joke. It's something you do because people, you just say, did you remember to nip your Neiman's, which means nothing. But people after, you can tell a lot by a person by the fact that they'll go, oh yeah, no, I think I did. They'll just agree to whatever it was because they won't go to the lengths. I just found that to be crazy because I don't care what I have to do. I want to know what you say. But a lot of people I'm related to will just go, because they don't want to go through. And I said this on Tuesday. I get so frustrated, especially with my son. If he says something to me and I don't understand, and I say I don't understand, he goes, never mind, Mom. And I go, oh, I've pulled the car over before and said, oh no, we are not going to do that. We worked way too hard to be able to communicate with you for me to stop because I didn't understand what you said. We're not doing that. And he goes, oh my goodness, right? You get a lot of eye rolling, but we figure out what it is that he's trying to say. I can't imagine. But a lot of people let it go. What do? Do you hunt it down? Because I'm obnoxious and people sometimes don't like me because I'm so obnoxious about it. But I want to know. I want to know what people are saying, but I also want to know what you do. What do you do when you can't understand what somebody is saying? Because you know what some of our kids do? They misbehave because they can't hear what the person is saying. They can't decode it. They can't understand it. And it's frustrating, isn't it? When you can't understand what somebody's saying, it's frustrating. So I'd love to hear from you. What do you do when you can't understand what somebody is saying? We'll learn a lot about our kiddos if we look at what we do. All right, moving on. We always have a topic of the day, and our topic this week is about understanding and responding to cues. This is a very important area for all of us to take a look at, that we all have areas of strengths and weaknesses here, whether we're on the spectrum or we're not. I'm fascinated sometimes to watch my son pick up on cues that I miss, that I'll go, I didn't see that. And he'll go, didn't you notice this? But there are cues that I pick up on that he and my husband miss. I think it's fascinating to sit with a group of women after an event and say, oh, did you see when, this happened? And we pick up on a whole host of cues of, oh, and when he said that to her, did you see, the expression on her face? And oh yeah, We notice all kinds of things, and the men are like, what? Where was I when that happened, right? But the men pick up on different things. But here's the thing. Do we just accept the status quo and say, I missed that cue, my child misses that cue, my husband misses that cue? Is that the way it needs to be? Or if we choose to, if it's debilitating to us, if it gets in the way of our being successful at something, can we get better at reading cues and understanding them? And the truth is, we can. The science is in. We can learn how to pick up on those cues. There is a scene in The Story of Luke, which if you've never seen, I'm pretty sure it's available on Netflix now. I know it was on Amazon for a long time. Story of Luke with Lou Taylor Pucci, who we had on the show. You can watch the interview that Nancy and I did with him. Talented young actor who plays a young man, Luke, in the film. And we also had the director and the producer on the show as well. Really, really lovely film about a young man with autism who'd been living with his grandmother, and his grandmother suddenly dies, and it's time for him to find another place to live, so he gets pawned off with his uncle and his aunt and their family. And he tries to work a job, and there is a scene with Seth Green where he's at work at this place, and Seth Green pulls him into the other room, and they're looking through blinds at an interaction that's happening at the water cooler between a young man and a young woman. And Seth Green does color commentary for it that is brilliant about he says, watch the way she's touching her ear and she moves her hair. That means she's into him, and watch this. And it's fascinating because it's a bunch of things that a lot of us wouldn't pick up on. And I remember when Seth Green was on Conan O'Brien and they played that clip, and Conan said, I need this. I need somebody to go through and explain, I didn't realize that's all those things going on, because a lot of times, a lot of us miss out on a lot of cues. So check it out, Story of Luke. But that's what we're talking about, is which cues are important to you? What would you like to know? I know for people of a certain age, wanting to know what's happening with the opposite sex and why, what these cues mean, that's a very motivating thing. And in other points in your life, there are other things. I mean, understanding in a negotiation, business-wise, when the person is about to cave in and when you have ground to put what you want, your agenda forward. Fascinating, right? Something that could help you to be more successful in your life. And all of these things can help our kids to be more successful in a wide variety of arenas. So understanding and being able to figure out cues, really, really important. Okay, so moving on, we've got a really exciting show for you. We were able yesterday, I'm not even going to pretend that we're doing it live, but yesterday we did another interview with Jim the Trim, the amazing barber who captured all of our hearts a couple of months ago with the pictures of him giving a haircut to a little boy named Mason, who's on the autism spectrum. And then after a series of times meeting with Mason, because Mason was so afraid to get his haircut, something that's, we're all familiar with this, right? This can be a huge area of discontent because it's a whole sensory nightmare for our kiddos, and frightening, quite frankly. So Jim the Trim had taken the time with Mason, and then eventually he got down on the floor, laid on his belly while Mason was playing with something, and he gave that little boy a haircut, his first haircut. And it's been amazing what has happened for, to, and with Jim the Trim since then. So we've got an update from the man himself. I couldn't adore him more. Let's just say that. Disclaimer, I just think what an amazing human being. And he's got an update on some things that he's participating in and leading. So we're going to have that in just a few minutes. We've got some autism news for you. Very interesting that there are 2 books that have recently come out about autism, and a little bit of a firestorm, it appears, about that. An article written by one of the authors of one of the books about the other book out today, asking the, I guess, important question, was Dr. Asperger a Nazi? The question still haunts autism. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. It's an article written by Steve Silberman, who is the author of Neurotribes, about some of the things that are said in the new book in a different key. So we're going to take that on, and then, you know, we've started a couple of new things here on the show. On Tuesdays, we are doing Self-Care Tuesdays, and I want to remind everybody that this week, the thing that we're working on is finding a moment of silence. I realized this morning that I had not done that yesterday, and so I took the time to do that today. It's not about being perfect, right? It's about progress. So I hope you found your moment of silence. If you haven't, find one today. We have Grateful Wednesdays, which we completely forgot about yesterday, but this is what happens in life. And then we're starting a new segment on Thursdays. We're calling it Mindful Thursdays. So we've got something really important to talk about that. Plus, we've got a bunch of questions that you guys have written in. And if we have time, we want to do a recap of the wonderful Sensitive Santa event that we did right before Christmas. So stick with us. We've got lots more coming up, but first, these messages.
Our twins, Justin and Jessica, were premature babies, so we always were very conscientious of their development. But I think it was probably 15 months, Justin started getting really obsessive compulsive with opening and closing doors. And Justin started tantruming a lot too. These would be major tantrums that were just completely debilitating to the family.
Having to take them out of the house, put them in the car, drive around, just to calm them down.
Yeah, I remember a breaking point and just thinking, you know what, we got to do something. This is not right. Once we were on the track to getting a diagnosis for autism, we started sharing that with our close friends and family.
What is autism?
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 I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to,
Jeez. Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome. Love. The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these three words. There is hope.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest that we're thrilled to have back on the show is Jim the Trim. He is the barber that we were all talking about just a couple of months ago because he went that extra mile, got down on the floor, laid on his belly to cut a little boy's hair with autism after having worked with him up to the point where he could do that. We're thrilled to welcome you back to the show, Jim the Trim. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And you're coming to us from quite a distance away. Tell us where you're located out of.
Located in South Wales, UK.
And I imagine the weather's got to be not pretty there right now this time of year.
No, it's cold.
Cold and probably foggy and rainy a little bit.
Yeah, all the
Sounds
time.
just like Los Angeles. but thrilled that you're here. And Jim, you know that you touched the hearts of everyone around the world with your openness and your willingness to work with our kids and the lengths that you were willing to go to get down on the floor and cut that little boy's hair. Now, Mason, I believe, was his name. Is that correct?
Yes, it was Mason, yeah.
And that would have been enough, Jim, if that was all you ever did. But I have been following you over the last couple of months, and this has really been a life-changing thing for you, has it not?
It has. It's been incredible. A lot of stuff has been happening. But it's good. I love it. I'm enjoying every bit of it.
So give us an update. What's happening now? What have you decided to do?
Well, I thought I took the opportunity after seeing so many families that are obviously asking, obviously across the globe, to have my help, and obviously appreciate what I've done, and so many families obviously wishing to say like they wish they'd met someone like me when I was younger. So I thought to myself, well, let's take the opportunity, and now I open my barber shop an extra day a week on a Sunday. Obviously, especially just for the children on the spectrum.
So a whole day every week that's just devoted to these families coming in and having. Now I've seen some pictures of you guys and going that extra mile, sitting on the floor, sitting on the couch, taking care of the haircuts. It's kind of amazing what you've been doing. Have you had a big response from families? Are you getting a lot of customers?
A lot, yeah. So, well, I'm already now booked up a month in advance on Sundays already. So it's really good. It's good, it's good to have the feedback for it, and obviously I'm glad to obviously give something back now and see if I can help more children and more families get a little extra mile of more things.
Is it my imagination, or have I seen that you have also been taking the time to learn a little bit more about autism?
Yeah, well, it was a bit of a, it was a nice little present from my colleague actually. He thought, well, give me something that I could always carry with me for the rest of my life. So he bought me an autism awareness diploma. So I've just started first two. I passed the first 2 out of 8 exams so far, which is really good.
Amazing. So he didn't just buy the diploma for you, he bought the education that comes with it, and now you're going through the education. Is that correct?
Yes.
Amazing. Well, and I know that you've got some other big things that are coming down the pike, but are you ready to disclose what some of the things are that you're doing, or is it still we're keeping it close to the vest?
Let's say, well, basically I can probably give a little bit of a sneak in on it. It's basically we're looking to take a team of barbers, which I've spoke, quite big up in the UK, and we're basically going to get a team called the ABA, which is called the Autistic Barbers Assemble. Basically, what we're going to try and do, which we hope is going to work, is to take a team to certain locations in the UK, like obviously like got England, Scotland, and Ireland and Wales, and we set up an event especially for that day, just to take bookings for children on the spectrum and obviously raise money for charity and obviously help get kids to get over the fear of the haircut.
Jim, I just got to tell you that if I don't know where your parents are, but they must be so proud of you.
Yeah, I think they're doing pretty good. Like they see it all the time. But they don't show it. They don't show the emotion behind it. But I think they're pretty happy what I'm doing. But
you're not my kid, and I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. This is amazing, and so kind of a touring kind of thing, so you can get to the families who can't get to you in Wales. Well, I hope that at some point you decide to come over the pond and bring something like that to the United States, because clearly you've touched a nerve here, and so many people have commented on how hard this has been for them. So I really want to applaud you. Anything else that you want to tell our viewers at home?
Basically, say obviously I hope people can follow me. Obviously on my personal Facebook, James Williams. You can follow obviously Jim the Trim, which if you want to, but I do like to post a lot of stuff on my own personal one, obviously, because I like to share that a lot with, obviously that's where a lot of my followers are come from now.
So where should we go then to follow the one that you want us to follow?
But basically just type James Williams, and then obviously they'll see the photo of me with Mason on the floor. So obviously that gives it an easy way to access it.
Okay.
And obviously just keep on obviously willing to see what I'm trying to do, because I do believe like there's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening this year. Like I say, August the 28th is the actual first event, which is I think I should tell people across the other side.
Okay.
That's when we're starting it, and it's going to be in Scotland.
Wonderful. Well, so go to James Williams. And I know, because I follow you, it's exciting. We get to, not only do I get to see some of the great haircuts that you do on a regular basis, and yesterday you did a great hair color that I thought was amazing, but we get to see when you get kiddos who come in and are on the spectrum, and to see some of the other things that you're doing. You're a very fun follow.
Great. So it's good to hear. Thank you.
Great. So we'll tell people that's on Facebook, James Williams, and obviously you'll see the picture of him cutting Mason's hair. Hey, Jim the Trim, thank you so much for everything that you're doing and for giving so many of us so much hope.
No, it's good. They say one day, obviously I hope I can come across. It would be nice to take the team over.
Yes. We can get a little workshop set up here in Los Angeles. It'd be awesome.
If you can give me the backing for it, like I say, I think that'd be pretty brilliant if you get us over there. I'd love it.
We'll try to see what we can do. Thank you so much for taking. I know you've worked hard all day, and then you just got off and took the time to be with us. So we really appreciate you.
No, anytime. Like I say, I'm happy to keep posting, and obviously, anytime you need me on, I'm happy to be there.
I think we're going to have you back on again. So thanks again. We're going to take a break right now, and then we're going to be back with more Autism Live. Stick with us. Welcome back. Don't you just love Jim the Trim? I don't know about you, and I said this to him, he just gives me so much hope. The fact that there could be, he's a young guy in his 20s, his mid-20s, and the fact that he has gotten so excited about wanting to be able to help our kiddos, it just, fills me with hope. This is one of the things that whenever I have an opportunity to talk to therapists who work with kiddos on the spectrum, I'm always in a certain amount of awe of them. I was just saying to somebody the other day that, among autism parents, I have yet to meet an autism parent that I didn't like. And it's interesting that one of the things that we all share is that we say, I didn't choose this chose me. And we rise to the occasion, each of us in our own way, right? But it's always fascinating to me, people who, to me, it appears that they chose the field of autism. Excuse me. Although people like Dr. Grampiche say, no, this chose me. This came and found me, and it tapped me on the shoulder, and I couldn't ignore it. So perhaps it is the same for them, but it doesn't always seem that way to me, right? Because they could go and do something that's, I don't know, more glamorous or pays more, or, doesn't require combat pay on certain days. So it's always fascinating to me and gives me such hope when young people say, no, I see this, and it excites me because I know that I can make a difference. It's something that I really, really respect. When I talk to young therapists and I talk about when was the moment that they knew that they were going to stay, you know, a lot of them, excuse me, took a job doing therapy because they heard about the benefits and they heard, oh, this is, you know, this is a much better job to be doing at college than, you know, working at a fast food restaurant, and it's going to give me great things on my resume, and this will help me throughout my life, and it's job, you know, and I need a job. And they talk about the moment at which one kiddo that they ran one program with to teach them something, and the kiddo lit up like a Christmas tree and learned something, and the therapist was transformed forever, and said, this is the coolest thing ever, and if I could be a part of helping this child to learn this, then what else could I be a part of? And we see that with Jim the Trim, that he's like, wow, if I can help these families, you know, this is my calling, cutting hair, excuse me. And if it's this big of a deal to these families and these kiddos, then what else can I do? And he's learning. It's just so, so fabulous for me. So it's a good news on a good day, and we applaud him, and we'll keep you posted. We'll have Jim the Trim. It's always funny because we have to have him, we can almost never do a segment with him live because he's cutting hair until 8 o'clock at night in Wales, and then we catch him afterwards, which is, you know, 12:30 our time. So at some point we'll have to have him live so you guys can ask questions. In any case, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back. This story in the news. Was the discoverer of autism a Nazi? This is featured in NPR, written by Steve Silberman, who is the author of the book that's out right now, Neurotribes, and it takes issue with some of the things in another book, a competing book called In a Different Key. Stick with us.
It's every parent's desire for their child to have a great start in life. Yet there is a condition affecting more children's lives than pediatric cancer, diabetes, and AIDS combined. Autism strikes 1 in every 150 children.
Today, 1 in 110 kids in the U.S. will be diagnosed with autism. That is a huge jump from 30 years ago when it was 1 in 30,000.
Startling new report finds the number of children with autism is skyrocketing. The Centers for Disease Control estimates 1 in 68 children has a form of autism. Now that's a 30% increase in just 2 years.
Well, a lot of the children and all the accomplishments over the last 20 years, I'm thrilled.
I think what kept me was the feeling that, you know, I would have a parent come to my office late at night at UCLA and just fall apart. And this is a long time ago, and there were much less back then in terms of services and knowledge and so on. And I would just sit with the family and the parents and walk them through and try to take away some of their fears, you know. And at that point I realized, I think the thing that's actually most important to me is that process. I mean, thank God that I've been very, very lucky and blessed to have so many incredible clinicians join me along the way and just develop CARD in such an amazing, magnificent way. That I could, you know, for me it was more really about how can I help the families? What can I do for the moms, the dads, you know? It is just, and I feel like, you know, there's no way I would ever really know because I haven't had my own child go through this, but I've experienced it with people a lot of times.
Hi, this is Megan. I'm in first grade all by myself. My teachers are so fabulous. I like to read books. I like to go to my friends' birthday parties. I like to invite my friends to my birthday parties. I once had a sleepover with a friend. I like to have play dates with my friend. I'm the best reader in my class. go to the library. I like to read different series of books. And here's how I learned to do all these things. By my card friends and Dr. Grampy Shay. Thank you, card friends and Dr. Grampy Shay.
Welcome back to Autism Live. In the news today, very interesting story, which I feel like there's more backstory to this than there is front story, but it's interesting. You have to admit that it's interesting. It's an article featured in NPR this morning. The title of it is, "Was Dr. Asperger a Nazi? The Question Still Haunts Autism." It is written by Steve Silberberg, who you may remember that name because he's the author of Neurotribes, a book that came out last fall, with its own fair share amount of controversy that came with it, especially because he did an op-ed piece in the LA Times that I took some issue with a couple of things that he said. But Steve Silberberg has been a medical reporter reporting on the autism community for over 10 years. Now there is a book that is also, and his book Neurotribes, and I'm going to be completely honest here, I have not yet read Neurotribes, although it's on my list of things to do, and I have not yet read this newest book that's come out in a different key that's by John Donvan and Karen Zucker. Okay. Both of these books, in entirely different ways, cover the history of autism and kind of put it in perspective. I think these are both useful books to read. We've heard great things from people who have read Neurotribes. I cannot wait to read it, honestly. I also want to read in a different key. It's been getting a lot of publicity this week. There have been a lot of different articles on a lot of different news outlets. In fact, excuse me, Kelby was talking with us yesterday about having watched the person here in the United States who's considered patient one, the first person who was ever diagnosed by Leo Kanner with autism, was on one of the newslets, a gentleman who is, elderly at this point, and how fascinating that was. Okay, so you're up to speed now on a part of the backstory. So yesterday, Steve Silberman, put out this article, "Was Dr. Asperger a Nazi?" Dr. Asperger was the doctor who first identified a classification that we now call Asperger's, which is that high-functioning autism. One of the things that Steve talks about in this article is that people make the assumption that he only looked at individuals with high-functioning autism, and he says that he's got proof that that's not the case, that he looked at a wide variety of individuals with autism and different types of autism, although they weren't calling it that then. And that he was doing that and was a kind and caring physician before Hitler's rise to power in Germany. Now, here is where the stories part, and we have different viewpoints from the three different authors of the two different books, because in this article, which I encourage you to read, Steve Silberman talks about the fact that we do have documentation showing that Dr. Asperger enthusiastically signed in very big letters Heil Hitler to documents that he put out. We have at least one document in which he sentences a young girl who has mental difficulties to be put to death in a concentration camp. So these are things that nobody is quibbling and saying don't exist. They exist. But the differences in opinions seem to center around, was it a choice or was it something that was foisted upon him? Silberman certainly makes the argument in his article that at the time, one of the best things he could have done for his young patients is gone along to a certain extent so that he could help other people. That's Silberman's seeming point of view. You read it and see what you think from it. Although the authors of In a Different Key suggest that he, it was not for the good of individuals with autism that he was signing papers, sending people off to death. I will say that I think Silberman presents a very compelling argument that at the time, doctors who stood up for individuals who were mentally different were sent to the camps themselves and no longer had the opportunity to practice medicine. And that there would, we certainly could make a case that, and for his own preservation and for that of his patients, he might have chosen to just go on as far as he can. Although there's evidence on both sides. There's a journal that has now been found, and in it details that a friend of Asperger's, after seeing him speak at a conference, said, "Dude, I think you're overplaying your hand of, this doesn't seem like you because you seem a little too enthusiastic about this Nazism thing." I am paraphrasing, of course. He did not say dude. But interesting. I don't know that we'll ever have this controversy settled, although others have said, is this really what the argument needs to be? We don't have a designation of Asperger's anymore. This Asperger and a few of his colleagues did a lot to further the discussion. They were among the first people to really note that these individuals were not IQ challenged, but that they had other issues going on, and that we should not discount what that has done for the autism community, whether their politics were something that was completely distasteful or not. So the controversy continues, but a very interesting article. I really encourage you to read it. It's on NPR this morning in the health section. Was Dr. Asperger a Nazi? The question still haunts autism. Is it haunting you? I don't know that it's haunting me. I find it fascinating, but it's certainly not haunting me. Doesn't affect my child today, but I'd love to hear from you guys. What's your opinion? But check out the article. We're going to take a break now and go now. I'm looking at the time. Do you want to go to the A word, Kelby? Let's not. Let's just do another short break, and then we'll come back and do our Mindful Thursday. So stick with us.
What is autism?
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 I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to just
Jeez. Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them.
Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
Is a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome. Love. The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these three words. There is hope.
Welcome back. We have a new segment that we're doing each day. On Tuesdays, we're doing Self-Care Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, we're doing gratitude, although we forgot to do gratitude yesterday. So we might have to catch up on that today. And then on Thursdays, today's the first time that we're doing Mindful Thursday. Some of you remember Evelyn Gould, who used to be a regular on the show, an amazing clinician. And we're hoping to have Evelyn on the show in a couple of weeks. I had the opportunity, Evelyn is finishing up her PhD work, and I had the opportunity to participate with her for her dissertation on a study that she's doing, working on parents on the autism spectrum, helping them to strengthen their mindfulness on a regular basis, and how that, the autism parent being mindful, how that might positively impact their child. And I can tell you that it so overwhelmingly impacted my child, and my ability to let him do the things that he needed to do without me getting in the way and being the helicopter parent that we all know that I'm capable of being. In any case, I won't, it's not as though it suddenly bonked me in the head and cured me of being a helicopter parent. But let's say that the apron strings got infinitely longer to the point that my son really noticed and his world has opened up a little bit more. So that's a great thing. And it really has made me more passionate about making sure that I'm doing these things on a regular basis. I will also tell you too that quite honestly, it helped to lower my anxiety. And so if it positively impacts our kiddos and it helps to lower our anxiety, I thought, oh, well, we need to add this to the show and make it a regular thing. So we are going to each week talk about something to do with mindfulness. And I want to start today with talking about the difference between acceptance and contentment. This is a lesson that somebody gave me many years ago before I had a child with autism, but then when somebody reminded me to apply this to autism, it was a mind-blowing moment for me. So, and what I was taught was that acceptance and contentment are not the same thing, and that while we never give up, that's the contentment portion, that we're always striving to something better. It is important on a daily basis to have a moment of inhalation and exhalation where we accept what is, that we not rail against it. And we had Byron Katie on the show, and she has a book called Loving What Is. That's like the 13 steps down the road, but just a moment of acceptance. And it's something that can absolutely be applied to anything. That for those of us, myself included, that we have New Year's resolutions about being healthier and perhaps even losing weight, right? One of the reasons why statistically we don't follow through on it is that, you exercise and then you're sore and there's no immediate change, right? And so we're not in acceptance and we're not in contentment. We're unhappy, but we're not willing to do the things that we have to do to change it. And instead, if we take a moment and just say, I accept that my weight is not what I want it to be, that's where I am today. And I fully accept that. Then it leaves room for us to look and say, but am I content with that? Is that what I want it to be? And is there something that I can do today to work towards it being something else? It doesn't negate the fact that it is, and it does not negate the fact that my heart and my spirit want to be something else. So if we look at that with autism, and I do think that I have so much work to do on acceptance and contentment in so many areas of my life, including autism, but especially when we were in our intensive behavioral intervention, and I look back through my journals then, it's the one area where I think I did a pretty good job, that I was never happy with where we were, but I spent at least a portion of every single week, I won't say every single day, but every single week where I would say, okay, he has autism, and that is not something that I can change right now, and I need to love this little boy for every single inch of him and everything that he is, and even the behavior that I'm struggling with. I need to love him for that. And yet I'm not content with the progress that we have, so this is what we're going to do. It helped me to stay fresh with therapy. It helped me to keep the therapy going when it was really hard. It helped me to have fun and appreciate him. My husband and I, as we were commemorating the 10-year last year, one of the things that we talked about is that, there are some lessons from when we were in the early intervention that we have not applied to our lives now. Because our lives were so jam-packed with things that were scheduled, and it had to be this and it had to be that, we were very particular about saying, when we have 5 minutes or when we have a minute and a half, we carve this time out as a family and we have fun. That when the last therapist would leave and we would close the door behind the last therapist and dinner would be cooking and it would be a mad rush to try to get homework done and to get food on the table, whatever, we always would stop and put on a song and dance for a minute and a half. And what's funny about that is that that's what I remember. I can remember the feeling of, oh, we have so much to do. I remember that, but I remember the joy of when we danced around the room and had a minute, and we don't do that anymore. Now, I can accept that and say, oh, our lives are busy and we're different. I'm not content with that. And it gives me an opportunity to make a new choice today instead of flushing the whole thing away. Because this is what we do a lot of times, is we go, it's this and it's all encompassing. Well, that's blue or that's red, when in fact our lives are full of gradients. And when we work on acceptance and contentment and say, well, this is what is, this is the part of it that I'm not happy about with, we get gradations. We enjoy ourselves more and we are in the present. So instead of hearkening, because there is a part of me that goes, oh, I wish it was like that when he was little again. No, I don't want to go back to that. And I don't need to go back to that. I can look at it and go, oh, what I'd like is more of when we all dance with the band in the living room. Now, I have a teenager. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get him to do it. But you know what? That's acceptance too. I love having a teenager. Do I have to be content with when he's too cool for school? I can chip away at it. Acceptance and contentment, they are not the same thing. But I guarantee you that if we look at the whole timeline of your life, you might be thinking this is the worst moment right now, but there might be a time when later on you look back and go, hey, there were parts of that that were quite lovely. So instead of waiting, see if you can think about what those are right now. Accept what is. Look at where you'd like to work on the contentment portion. It's our Mindful Thursday. We're going to take a break now and go to the A Word. This is the documentary that follows a little boy and his family, Jack Riley. We're in the first weeks of therapy now and taking a look at how stressful that can be for a family. If you find yourself watching this episode and going, oh my gosh, it's so stressful, do yourself a favor and go to their YouTube page and look at the last episode and what this family says about how worth it was to go through this moment. Here it is, the A Word.
If everybody's agreed and held hands that early intervention is key, then I can't imagine why. If the original center knew on November 2nd that they didn't speak or make much noise at all during the evaluation, they knew that on that day. I can't comprehend for the life of me why it would even take a month to start speech therapy. That doesn't make any sense to me.
The waiting's hard.
The waiting's really hard. We read things about how the brain is so much more valuable the younger they are. Every day that ticks by just seems like a waste of time. You go on the websites and you read all these things, and there's kind of a club, I think, of moms who call themselves autism warriors. And I hated that word when I first read it. I hated it. I still do. Because I don't, there's a lot of things I wanted to fight for, but I didn't have to fight for autism.
Yeah. It's okay, man. We're lucky in that he sprints to mom.
Okay, this is how my son reacts to me coming home. Oh, Jack Riley. Hi! Mommy's home! Mommy's home! Hello!
When he sprints to me when I get home, and he kisses you and hugs you. Where's my son?
One of the first people that I told when we got the diagnosis was a good friend of mine who knew somebody who had an adopted son who has autism. And had not only fought, talk about autism warrior, this woman founded a whole foundation and was extremely active and extremely knowledgeable, and my friend put me on the phone with her. She was the one who turned me on to both ABA and to CARD, and to tell me how valuable it was, and we're very grateful for it because we realized that had we not been given information, we never would have known. The original center would not have recommended that for us. So it required us to really push to get what we wanted. And I didn't know even until I asked the question if I had a choice. I thought this was great advice. Don't ever feel that you're at the mercy of the regional center because they're paying for your services. She told me, you're paying for your services. They're using tax money to do this and you've paid taxes. Intake at CARD was actually a much more pleasant experience than the regional center evaluation. I think in part because we'd been through it once and it wasn't as scary for us. It was a good experience for us because we felt like our son was himself. He had all the same things going on as far as autism is concerned, but he was still bright and happy and affectionate. I felt like he showed them both his good sides and the sides that he needs to work on. So for us, it felt good because we felt like at least people were seeing what we see. I felt maybe for the first time that they got it, that it's like, okay, he is this way, this is what he's got going on, but we can make this better. At first, it was exhausting to think that every single thing was a teaching moment, that every single thing that he did, and I know that, you know, I would say something to him and he'd be like, really? Can we just feed him? Can we just feed him dinner? We don't have to worry about it. But now even that's not as exhausting because it's sort of starting to become more natural for us, so that it doesn't feel as awful.
But I remember feeling guilty just for being with him all day, and then, you know, just sort of sneak the TV on to Sports Center in the afternoon, and he's playing with his Legos, and I just back up and lean against the sofa with him between my feet, but I wasn't really watching him. I would just try to watch Sports Center for a few minutes, and then I'd always feel guilty and try to get over that. So
no more guilt.
I think we're teammates. That's the best thing. Is I feel like she's on my side. I'm on her side.
We sort of, we've been lucky that my weak moments are his strong moments.
Well, on a personal note, is the camera still on?
It is.
On a personal note, I would be lost. She really dove in, and I mean, I've Googled autism, and I still don't understand it until she explains it to me.
Which is scary because I don't really understand it.
Well, that's the point. But she dives to the next step, and I'm just starting to understand the last step, and she's trying to explain the next step. And I told her last night I would be lost if she wasn't doing that, because I wouldn't. I don't think I could. Sometimes I'm reading these things and it just floats over me because I go numb again reading about it.
Well, I think in fairness, I think one person in each family has to take that role, because I don't think you can both drive. I think there's always somebody in every family who just takes that role.
Yeah. If somebody takes charge, take a back seat. That's the moral lesson in that too.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I love that family. Just want to say that there's a wonderful final addition to the A Word that I want you to check out, and it's. I was just about to say that. In fact, Kelby just said, and it's well edited, and I want you to see that, you know, the first however many episodes, 51, 52 episodes, were all shot and edited by one person. The very talented Suzanne Oshinsky. And then, you know, she left and got married and went on to other things. And so Kelby shot and edited the last one. And it was funny because I've been a fan of the A Word since minute one. And when we went to go and meet with them, and they were talking, and usually I totally defer to Kelby and say, whatever you want to do, because what do I know? And Kelby knows everything. Kelby's brilliant. And they said, oh, well, we'll sit here on the couch. And it was the same couch. And Kelby was like, nah, let's do something different. And I went, you have to shoot some, like whatever, you know, definitely shoot something to show that they've gone on. But you have to have them on the couch. Like, because I'm such, and it's those ending moments when they're talking to each other on the couch, which were some of my favorite moments of the A Word. Kelby was like, oh, okay, I didn't realize it was a thing. And I emotionally, I was like, there has to be a couch moment. Love that family, love what they did. And first of all, that they put their lives on hold, as so many of you are doing, as my family did, so that you could do this intervention. They were honest about it, and they did something that none of us, including me, did. They said, come on in, let cameras come in, let people learn from our mistakes, let them poke fun when there's fun to be poked. The dad, you know, I can't even tell you the number of times that I've watched an armchair quarterbacked and said, watch as the dad makes this mistake, and he has been so lovely about letting people learn from that and having a sense of humor about it. My husband and I could not have done that. Just saying, we could not have done that. Okay. thank you for loving the story in the restaurant. Glad that you guys appreciate, and we are the best of friends, and we laugh about that story all the time now. So I'm glad that you guys appreciated it too. Okay. Somebody else wrote in and said, "Hi Shannon, glad to have you back, even with the cough, really, because I'm driving myself crazy, but I'm glad to be back too." And they wrote, "I have a question about my mainstreamed 6th grade 13-year-old son being beginning to self-stimulate at school during class time. How can I address this with him?" Oh my gosh, yes. I'm told that this is a thing that is very normal, and it isn't just our kiddos who are on the spectrum, but it certainly is a little bit tougher to deal with our kiddos on the spectrum. And part of it is, at what level of understanding do we start at, right? Because some of our kiddos, let's face it, you have to be aware enough physically to know what's happening, right? You have to be able to have inhibition under control. And I know it seems like it's counterintuitive, but when we talk about inhibition, we're talking about the ability to inhibit a response to something. That, just because you want to pick your nose, you don't do it, right? Just because you want to say, oh my gosh, that person is really, really fat, that I always think about the time when I was at a farmer's market and ran into a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine who, is in her 80s, and she'd never met my son. And I said, oh, I want you to meet my son. And she said, and my husband is here. And my son looked up at the two of them, and he's verbal at this point, but he was probably, 5, 6. And he was like, wow, you guys are old. All right. So understanding, that there are some things that we don't say and some things that we don't do, right? So you have to have the inhibition thing under control. And then there's a whole social component to it too, about what are other people thinking of what I'm doing. So there's a whole host of lessons here. And it's one of those things where you kind of have to figure out, well, where do I need to start with this? And you can start working on all of them in other areas and not bring it directly to the self-stimulation thing first. But the truth of the matter is, for a 13-year-old, you got to get it under control really quick, because they're going to start to complain at school. It's not going to be good. So, depending on how good their receptive language is, one of the things you can start with is that there are certain things that we don't do in public. And the one that I like to take it to is, we don't sit on the chair at school and take a poo, right? Because most kids, and it may be that your 13-year-old doesn't understand that, but then let's start with that. But if they're mainstreamed, I'm going to guess that they do understand that. Right? And the idea of taking a poo on the chair at school and talking through, and what would happen? What would happen if somebody took a poo in the classroom at school? How would your son react? How would the other kids react? And talking that through. What would happen if somebody came in without their pants on? With just their underwear on? Because teenagers start to have an awareness, and if they don't have an awareness of that, let's give them the awareness that, we don't come in a classroom with just our underwear on, and let's talk through what would happen if it did. And there are lots of video examples that you can find online of scenes in movies where somebody does something that's wildly inappropriate, and you get to see other people's reactions and point out the reactions of the other people to your child about, look at their face. One of the best things that I ever showed my son, they have that Educating Peter series, and I watched some of it with him. My son was not understanding physical space of other kids, and he liked to lean into them. He wanted that sensory. And the other kids would be like, get off of me. And when he got to 2nd grade, it was just like, and we had parents that were complaining. And I showed him a scene from Educating Peter where the boy would crash into other kids and lean on them. And they showed them interviewing the other kids and them going, I like Peter, but I really hate it when he does that. And they would show the kids saying, Peter, stop it. And Peter wouldn't stop it. And I remember showing it to Jem, and Jem said, they told him not to do that. Why didn't he stop? And I said, gee, that's funny, because your friends tell you to stop doing that and you don't. And that was the end of that, man. He was done with that. So taking it out of context sometimes, showing it to other people. But we got to get to the part where we say that it is wildly inappropriate to touch yourself in that region during class. Now, there's gray area, right? Because they have to be, you know, the package has to be moved around from time to time. We had a group of therapists when Jem was little come over and do a whole lesson on how do you slyly rearrange the package so that people don't think you're touching yourself. So it might be useful to have some men in your life to talk about, you know, this is, you know, and watch a couple of baseball games. Well, I don't know about baseball games, but there are times when we see it depicted where men rearrange themselves. You know, don't show a Michael Jackson video. I think that goes over the line. But talk about, well, you know, if you have to rearrange yourself, and there's got to be a pretty frank discussion, in my opinion, at some point about, you know, sometimes apparently you rearrange the package, and when you're a certain age, like it kind of, you know, gets everything going. And then the desire is to do whatever, but let's talk about, you know, what the consequences for that are, what people will think, what people will, how uncomfortable it will make them, and what you need to do when that happens. I remember when I was in high school, one of my teenage boyfriends talking about how embarrassing it was that, you know, like he would rearrange and stuff would happen, and needing to get the book, carry it in front of him and ask the teacher if he could have a pass to the bathroom. And I remember thinking, boy, I thought girls had stuff to worry about. I didn't realize the boys were dealing with that kind of stuff. But imagine having autism and not knowing, you know, this was a neurotypical boy who was embarrassed out of his mind and not knowing what to do about it. I can't even imagine for an individual with autism, because sometimes they don't know to be embarrassed by that. So I do think too that the clothing that you put the 13-year-old in plays a big part in this too. That access to things, you know, it's finding what are the underwear that keep things aerated but packaged. Like how we're talking all around this. And don't pinch and don't bind, right? So you got to find the right pair of underwear, and then you got to find the right pants. It may be that if you're putting them in sweatpants are roomy enough and loose enough that stuff can happen and you can gain access to stuff. And the pockets are a little bit more flexible. Maybe you need to go with something that's a little bit heavier, a little bit stiffer, not necessarily tight, right? But a jean that, you know, they're not going to, it would take if you're sitting down, it would take a great deal of energy to get a pocket in, you know what I'm saying? So I would definitely be thinking about all those things. And I don't know, you say that the individual is mainstream. I don't know whether you have an aide, but if an aide starts to see that attention is being paid to that there would be some sort of a signal that shuts it down immediately, and that you offer a reward for not having to have the signal noticed, and a different reward for noticing and stopping when the signal happens. And then, of course, we need to make sure, in my opinion, I know everybody has different thoughts and feelings about this, but I firmly believe that if we set up parameters that are doable for our kids, then they'll adhere to them. And I think the expectation of saying to a 13-year-old boy that, you know, there's no time in which we self-stimulate is probably a losing battle, right? So in my opinion, my parenting style is that I encourage people to say to your kiddos, that's your equipment. And when you are behind a closed door, like, don't hurt yourself, but, you know, have a tea party. But it does, you know, it's the same as taking a poo. We don't do it other places. That happens in the bathroom. That happens in the shower. You know, your bedroom door is shut. But, you know, so giving the appropriate places in which that can happen That's my advice. Now that was a dicey little conversation. Write me back and let me know how things go and if you think that that's doable. I firmly believe too that, you know, not shaming our kids about the fact that they have those desires and urges, that, you know, I think it's better if we say to them, you know, that's all natural, just like taking a poo. There's nothing wrong with taking a poo. You just don't do it in public. All right. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back with more questions for you guys. Stick with us.
Our twins, Justin and Jessica, were premature babies, so we always were very conscientious of their development. But I think it was probably 15 months, Justin started getting really obsessive compulsive with opening and closing doors. And Justin started tantruming a lot too. These would be major tantrums that were just completely debilitating to the family.
Having to take them out of the house, put them in the car, drive around, just to calm them down.
I remember a breaking point and just thinking, you know what, we got to do something. This is not right. Once we were on the track to getting a diagnosis for autism, we started sharing that with our close friends and family. It just so happens that somebody from our older daughter's private school called us out of the blue. She introduced herself and she says, I know that recovery is possible. Those words so early in our journey were a guiding force for us. As we got more educated in knowing what is effective therapies for kids with autism, we realized quality ABA is vital to that progress. That's where we decided that CARD was the right provider for us and for our son. Justin responded very well to therapy. The behaviors were tracked, and we saw that what was being instituted was working.
Justin, what are you doing?
I'm coloring.
You are coloring. Good for you.
There was real progress, and it was progress that was tangible.
I just remember when he made a sentence, he said a sentence. We were just happy about it, going, no way, I can't believe you just did that.
What's the date?
The 18th.
18th of what month?
December.
Oh, what year is it?
2007.
Oh, okay, so how old are you today then?
5.
The therapies that CARD did for Justin didn't just impact his daily living skills, but it was a positive impact on our entire family.
I'm Justin. I am in 4th grade. I like playing video games sometimes. My dream to build a teleporting machine. It's like sometimes if like we're on an airplane and it's like really long, you guys just say, oh, hurry up with that teleporting machine. I'm waiting on you. And I just started Friday Night Lights. This is our 3rd game of the season, and it's pretty fun. You have to be fast.
We attribute so much of Justin's recovery to CARD. Their goal was the same as our goal. We wanted Justin recovered. June 12, 2008 is a day that I celebrate every year because that is the day that Justin was deemed recovered from autism. And Dr. Doreen Grandpichet met with us, looked at him and just said, he's brilliant. You need to keep his mind stimulated because he's very smart and he has no residual traits of autism.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're having some internet issues, so I'm accessing your questions on my phone. I'm not playing a game. I'm just letting you know. That's why I've got my phone out. Okay, so this question goes hand in hand with everything we've been talking about today. And it just made me realize who the guest was that I should have arranged to be on the show, but that's okay. I'll try to get her on another show. Hi, Shannon. Always so good to watch your show. It's a great picker-upper. Question. While studying with my son last night, noticed he may know the material, but he misunderstands the question. For example, what was said was square, and what he heard was circle or square. He says it happens to him more when he's stressed or tired, so tough for him. How many times he has been misunderstood or discounted? Is this auditory processing or something else? And thank you. Well, first of all, I don't know whether it's auditory processing or not, but I know that it's really common. So let's start there. And the fact that it happens when he's tired or stressed, really common too. We heard Dr. Grampiche say yesterday that stress plays a huge, huge factor in that kind of thing. And so let's talk about like two different things. In this case, it was something that was auditory, that something was said and he misheard it. But I will tell you that there are even times when this happens with a written test. That one of the things that I learned as a teacher, one of my specialties was helping kids to prepare for tests. And I do this myself with a test that we are so nervous and anxious and we want to get started on it that we don't always A, read the directions, but we don't always B, read the question and stop and consider what is being asked here. We were just talking about this, my husband and I, we like to catch Jeopardy at night. And I'm pretty good at Jeopardy, but I could never be on the show because sometimes it takes me forever to figure out, because they give you the answer and then you have to figure out the question, but sometimes I can't figure out what it is they're looking for. Like, are they looking for a state or a person? Because the way the question is, it just takes me too long. Once I can dissect it, I can get it. And part of the reason why I know how to dissect it is because for years I taught kids how to dissect a question. So we start with, whenever we're helping children to prepare for a test, a written test, with asking them to do some breathing exercises. And I think that this goes hand in hand probably for your child, that if he reports that when he gets stressed or when he gets tired, his ability to hear and decode diminishes, then let's start with how do we combat the anxiety and the tiredness, and it all happens with breath. That when he feels that starting to come on, we need to build in and make it go so hand in hand that he automatically knows that that's time to take a deep inhale and a deep exhale and to do 3 of those. Everything gets better. We heard this, we've covered this before on the show, the monk, Norman the monk, who has written a great deal about this. 3 breaths in and out slowly solve a lot of the world's problems. So we want to build it in. If you're working on homework with him and you're seeing that that's starting to happen, stop everything, take 3 breaths, and then reward him for that, right? So that we start to build in and that he will find himself doing it at school as well. And remind him that that doesn't make him odd or weird. If we took 10 neurotypical people and they've done, you can show him, great show, what is that show? Oh my gosh, I'm having a senior moment. You can find it on Netflix. It's Brain Games. That's what the name of it is. And they do this on Brain Games where they take 10 neurotypical people, all with supposedly great working memory, and they have them in a circumstance and they have something happen, and then they ask them questions afterwards about what did you see and what did you hear, and they all tell different stories, okay? So remind him that he's not weird, that it's not, but that there's a way, right? So it's acceptance of, that just happens. But the contentment part of it is that he can get better at it by taking 3 breaths. That it's a great time to, and that he can ask again, not in all circumstances, but that he has the right to ask if he can ask again, did you say this or did you say that? Totally viable. I also think that it's important to give a replacement behavior. Part of what happens when we're trying to listen, and if we have auditory difficulties, we start to feel tense, and now we're holding our shoulders this way, and now the breath gets shorter, and now less oxygen is getting to the brain, and it's all heading south. But if we have something else to do, it occupies the brain in a different way and opens up the receptors so that we're not dealing with the stress. So I encourage, if your student has not already learned how to take Cornell notes, you can Google it. and do a whole little workshop on how to take Cornell notes. It's one of the best things. When I was a college professor, I used to make all of my students take Cornell notes. And, you know, when I taught earlier grades, I taught them how to do Cornell notes. Last year, Jem's teacher taught him how to do Cornell notes, and other parents were complaining about it, saying they're in 6th grade. Why? Yeah, yay! Do it as early as possible. The great thing about Cornell notes is that it separates your paper into 3 main different areas. I'm going to take this sheet of paper here, you can do this in notebook paper, right? But it's 3 areas. So you've got the big area here, you've got a side column, and then you've got this area down here. This is where you take the notes. This is where you write questions that you have about the notes, and here is where later on you summarize what's on the page. Oh my gosh, for studying, fabulous, because you don't have to go through all this. You see the summary down here. And when you're listening to the lecture, you're writing down whatever, you know, they're saying, whatever they're writing down on the board, but any questions that you have, this is a gold mine here because it allows you to listen instead of processing your question. When I used to lecture, and even when I lecture now, I say to people, I might get to it. Don't ask any questions until I get to this point. Write your questions down because it disrupts the flow, you know, and you want to get to a certain amount of thing, and you're going to answer the questions. But what happens in the students' minds is that they're sitting there and they're going, oh, okay, they're talking about this, so I wonder if it's this, and then their brain starts to spiral down. But we find that if you write down the question, then it lets your brain go back to what you're hearing. So it refreshes and clears the computer. So Cornell Notes, a great thing. Now, some of the other things, if you suspect that this is going on and that it is an auditory processing thing, here's some things you can do about that. You can go into skills and do some of the phonemic awareness and see whether, you know, probe, see whether he can, it'll have different lessons about can he distinguish between this and this, and you can ask him and see can he, and if he can't, do the lessons. It's useful. If you see that that's not the case, or you see that there's a bigger problem than what you had previously thought, there is something called AIT. It's Auditory Integrative Therapy. In some circles, it's referred to as Baralt or Tomatis, and there is a difference between Baralt and Tomatis, but the treatment that you would seek out now is AIT. Auditory Integrative Therapy. It is expensive, I'm not going to lie to you, and it's very time consuming, but it is FDA approved, which means that for educational uses, which means that sometimes your insurance will cover it. And when your insurance won't cover it, there are other places that tend to cover it. I've talked before about the United Healthcare Children's Fund that will give you a grant of up to $5,000, which is about what one course of AIT would do. And a lot of people who have auditory processing difficulties report that one course of AIT will do it. What it involves, long hours. I mean, you have to make yourself available, and sometimes you have to be available on 2 and 3 times during a day, where the person comes in, is outfitted with this headgear, and they listen to sounds, and what it does is stimulate different parts of the brain. What it does is it tunes the brain into listen to this sound, don't listen to this sound. I have, usually when you want to do AIT, and I know somebody who does it on a regular basis and does it here in California. I will invite her to be on the show to talk about it. It's equipment, and usually what she does is she'll find a core of people who want to do it, and she'll go to that community for like a 10-day period, and a certain number of people have to be signed up to do it in order for it to be cost effective for her. And I have friends that the entire family signed up to do it when money was not as big of an issue as it tends to be now. And so I've talked to adults who are not on the spectrum who have said, boy, my ability to focus after doing this was just mind-blowingly different, and that we have seen some kids be able to speak and their rate of being able to speak after doing a course of AIT vastly different. Now, others don't have the huge response, but that they have more subtle differences. And it is expensive. So I would make sure that it's something that you really want to look at before jumping in to do that. But definitely take a look at what it is. And we'll talk more about AIT on the show, and I will invite the person that I know that does it to Skype in with us because she lives up in Northern California. But it is something to be considered if you find that it is a big issue and it's something that is holding him back. All right? We're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back with more Autism Live after these messages. Currently in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism. My beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Granpichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable and recovery from autism is possible. Welcome back to Autism Live. A couple of things that I want to catch up on. A couple of you wrote in on our Facebook question of the day, which was, what do you do when you can't understand what somebody is saying? Somebody wrote in and said, I just look at the color of the other person's eyes, which I find really interesting. And this is exactly why we asked that question, because that would never occur to me. And yet, there have been times in my life when I have said something to somebody and they have just looked at me, and I thought, what's happening right now? And perhaps that's exactly what they were doing, was looking at the color of my eyes. And as stated at the beginning of the show, I'm such a nutball about that kind of thing that I literally will say, what's happening right now? Did you understand what I said? Did you hear me? Is everything okay? That's me. But I'm sure that not everybody does that. I think that I'm kind of unusual in that way. Then another person wrote in and talked about the fact that they aren't always able to understand their 18-year-old son, but that they usually, like me, try to tear it apart and figure out, okay, so what's happening so that you can be understood. And I have to say, that's great. And I would love to say that I've always been that way with my son. Sometimes I'm just too tired. Sometimes I'm just too tired, and I will usually say to him then, I'm not understanding what you're saying and I'm really tired, so help me. And there have been times when one or both of us have given up, and I'm not proud of that, but I try really hard not to give up on the communication thing, because it's just so vital and important. And I hate it when I feel like people give up on me, and I never want my son to feel like I've given up on him. But the reality is sometimes you're just too stinking tired, and you do say, okay, we're not able to figure it out this time, but minimizing that whenever possible. I also wanted to take a second too. It's so funny, when after the show yesterday with Nancy, we were talking about food, because we love to talk about food, and we were talking about gluten-free and some of the different challenges that we have, and bless Nancy's heart, we didn't really talk about Reed Jackson and his health yesterday, but your continued prayers are needed and wanted now more than ever for Reed and for Nancy's whole family. And we have a meal train that people have been bringing food to Nancy to help in this really difficult time. And I started the meal train, and it was one of our viewers who told us about meal train, and it's a great, great thing to be able to use. And I was able to give details because, it's one of those times in your life when you're going through something catastrophic, and this is catastrophic. Other families, when they're going through that, people bring food. It's a thing, and it's a helpful thing because you don't have time to shop and you don't have time to make things, and you still need to eat, or things start to really unravel and fall apart. But when you have one or more person in the family who is on a special diet, all of a sudden people get scared and they think, well, I don't want to bring something because it'll be a waste, and yada, yada, yada. So I was able to go into great detail and give lots of different suggestions of where people could go to get, different restaurants and things to ask for and things to say and things not to do. And many people don't cook anymore, and they just wanted to know, what can I buy her at the store? And one of the tips that I had given was that there are a great many products at Costco. Surprising me, Costco has really upped its game in the last 6 months to have more organic produce, more organic everything actually, more gluten-free, and even among the gluten-free stuff, there's a lot of casein-free things. So was very thrilled about a couple of weeks ago, and I see that it's on Facebook as well, that it's featured in Rachel Ray's Everyday magazine right now. That one of our favorite products is in Rachel Ray and in Costco, and packaged in a new way that I am just loving and having a great time with. What am I talking about? Explore Asian, the organic black bean spaghetti. Oh, my friends, can we talk for just a couple of minutes about this? We've featured it before on the show, and we featured some of the other different varieties, but the black bean one is the only one that I'm seeing in Costco right now. So these are pastas that are organic and that are made from beans. They are completely non-GMO. They are completely grain-free and dairy-free, and they are yummy. Now, the one thing that I will say to you is, if your expectation that the black bean pasta is going to taste exactly like spaghetti, no. It's not. It's like, it's like another genre of pasta, and it's really good, but don't be judging it against, there are lots of rice pastas that we can compare to regular pastas, and and they're getting better in time to getting closer and closer to what a wheat pasta would taste like. But then again, I think I've forgotten what a regular wheat pasta tastes like. But I think it's really important. Don't compare things against things that shouldn't be compared against. But this is a great pasta, and great with kind of different things than you would do with your other gluten-free pastas. We were at Costco. It's so funny because I had been making this pasta for Jem and doing it in lots of different ways, and not doing it with a spaghetti sauce, because I was saying it's not your traditional pasta, but I was doing it with more Asian things, and and he was loving it. But I will be honest that the store where we were getting it from wasn't close to where we were anymore, and it wasn't as available in other places. The bags that they came in were great, but I'm not so good at getting them zipped shut. So Costco has it in this big box now, a 5-pound box of the organic pasta, and they were demoing it, and Jem and I are walking down the aisle, and he always says, is this something that I can have? And I always say to him, I don't know, I'm standing over here, I have no ability to make my brain go and scan you go look, right? And the queen of sarcasm. So he went over, and I didn't know what it was, and he was like, Mom, it's black bean pasta, and it's gluten-free, and it's organic, it goes through the list of all the things that it needs to be for him to try it. And I said, oh, you've had this before. But she had it with spaghetti sauce. So then we had to ask about all these questions about the spaghetti sauce, which happened to be organic and vegan and gluten-free. Woohoo! They have like 4 different spaghetti sauces now at Costco, by the way, that fit that criteria. Love that. And this one was particularly good. And the kid loved it. And he went, why are we not having this all the time? And I said, I'll cook it for dinner tonight. And we did. But it's there at Costco now. So explore Asian black bean pasta. Now, I said to them, are you going to get the other ones in? And she said, I don't know. But, you know, honestly, this is the right one to start with because a lot of people can't have soy and a lot of the other ones have soy in them. So black bean pasta, get it now at Costco, and there's a whole bunch of other things. I just want to say, if you have refined tastes in your homes, our favorite thing from Costco is the Mediterranean stuffed grape leaves. They're rice and vegetables with grape leaves. Ooh, it's good. It's really good. It's Jem's favorite thing right now. It's not going to be every kid's taste because it's very Mediterranean. That's why I said if you have refined taste, try that. But definitely try the black bean pasta. All right, we're going to take a break and we're going to be back with more Autism Live after these messages. Here mid-swing on this wonderful day, this wonderful walk with Mr. Matt Asner. Talk to us about today's walk. Do we have any facts, figures, numbers, or just pure emotion?
Just pure emotion. I'm about to get the numbers. We'll see what it is. Okay. I think it's probably close to 1.6, probably. That's my feeling. But it's incredible. We had 55,000 people plus here today, and you know, I honestly, I've been here 7 years. It gets better and better and better. So.
And really what you fostered here today is hope. I know that's your favorite 4-letter word.
Where are we without hope?
Where are we?
Really, I mean, seriously, where are we without hope? Hope is everything. Hope is eternal.
This is a pretty big event. Every year I love it. What does this event mean to you?
Well, I just think it's great that you see so many people coming out to support, autism.
So we're here with Max Burkholder. There's a whole community of people that are going to love you no matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter what you do. And that's the autism community. Are you okay with this? Is this a good thing?
I'm pretty okay with it. This seems to be a pretty happy, supportive community.
Well, what did you learn about autism through portraying this wonderful character?
Sort of the individuality of it. You know, like with autism spectrum disorders, a tendency is to sort of generalize everybody with sort of the same degree of affliction as sort of exactly the same and very generalize them a lot. But something I found while just talking to everybody and that I tried to put into the characters, just the sense of individuality that all of them have, everybody has. And so at a certain point it became not really even portraying autism, it just sort of became portraying the character.
I want to say thank you on behalf of everybody for what you do.
That's very sweet.
To bring awareness and to raise money. That's a tremendous, tremendous legacy. But as a dad, you've got other things that you're doing as well.
Yeah.
I want to know, as a family, if you have any advice, what's been something that's been helpful to you personally?
You know, get your autistic kids out in the community. I mean, my son's got a guide dog, so he goes to a lot of cool places. He surfs, he skis, does gymnastics. He's actually trying Hebrew school. I'm not quite sure if he knows what's happening there, but he does all kinds of cool things, and he has a lot of friends. Right now, most of his friends are the adults who take care of him, and over time, hopefully he'll have more friends who are his age, and you'll see him walking around, and people won't be nervous around him. The dog's been very helpful with that. It's like the dog is like the most infectious thing in the world. Like everybody wants to be near the dog, and he sees that, and he gets some of that affection laid onto him. So as a family, you know, we're just there to support Tyler and make him happy.
Welcome back to Autism Live, and I was saying to Kelby, I always feel self-conscious when you guys compliment me, but I want to read it. The parent who wrote in about the son who's misunderstanding, and so she wrote, "Wow, thanks for the great tips, Shannon. Jem is lucky. I think I'm the lucky one." But she wrote, "Appreciate your wealth of knowledge. Her son, apologizes all the time when he misheard, and I keep reminding him that it's my ears too. We do have the listening program, and we'll take it out again, and you're awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for, I love being able to be here and have these conversations, and you're awesome. You're the one who's asking the questions, and that's the thing, right? That's always the thing. If we don't ask the question, I don't know what the answers are, and sometimes I don't even know what the questions are, right? And when somebody asks a question, like, you know, we did this entire week about understanding and being able to act appropriately on the right cues. And it wasn't until you asked this question about him mishearing that I thought, oh, we should have had the person who does AIT on here. And otherwise, we would not have had that conversation. So thank you for asking the right question so that we can get to the right answer, because I'm 100% sure if not you, there's somebody else that needed to hear about that will watch this show today or some other day. So thank you for asking the right question. That is what it is all about, my friends. Okay, so, my gosh, we have so many other questions that I want to go back to, because we had a question that came in before we took the break over the holiday where we started talking about meltdowns, because we had a series of questions from people writing in talking about what can you do when an autistic child is having a meltdown, and can you tell when the child is going to have a meltdown, and if so, how could it be prevented? And I love these questions talking about that, because this comes under the heading of seeing a cue, misreading it, right? And we had a little bit of a conversation yesterday with Dr. Grampiche about the fear that comes up in us when we see our kids start, you know, like, you might say to yourself, well, I can't tell when my child's going to have a meltdown. I just can't tell that. And yet, I think if we could sit down and have a conversation with you about when do you get nervous about being outside and what are the things that sort of happen, you would be surprised at how many cues you actually are picking up. It's just that you see the cues, and instead of having a replacement behavior of knowing, okay, here's the things that I can do in this moment, you descend into anxiety. I think particularly about after Jem started to get better and he wasn't having meltdowns anymore, there were a couple of meltdowns that came in the years afterwards that still loom epically in my mind because I wasn't expecting them anymore, right? And the meltdowns had gotten to a point where they weren't mundane, but they were so usual that I accepted them as my new normal, you know? And then there was one meltdown that happened in a McDonald's playland when he was probably in second or third grade. And I remember taking him to the McDonald's playland as a reward for something that he had done at school or something. We went to the playland. He was having a good time. I did all the things that I had normally done, and I gave him a countdown and said, we're going to be leaving at this time. We're going to do this. But something else happened, and I don't know that I ever put my finger on what it was exactly, except that I know that there was an expectation that the last time we had gone to the McDonald playland, he had ran into some of his friends from school, and I think the expectation was that he was going to do it again, although it's speculation, right? But he didn't, and I don't know whether he wanted to stay because he thought they were going to show up, but he couldn't verbalize it at that point. He was verbal, but he couldn't have verbalized something that complex to me, like, hey, the last time we were here, my buddy showed up, and that's really what I was going for this time, and it didn't happen, and I feel like if I stayed another 5 minutes, it would happen. Like, that's way beyond where he was at. But when we went to leave, oh my gosh, it got ugly, and it got ugly fast, and there were 3 different times that we cycled through that he was punching me in the head. And I think this was the last time, and he punched me in the head, and I went, oh, we're leaving right now. And he was still small enough that I could pick him up, and that griped him greatly because I didn't pick him up very often at that point. So, all of a sudden we'd gone like maybe 2 years with nothing wrong, and we were right in the soup again in the McDonald's. And I remember it was so bad because I had to get out the door to the playland that brought you back into the restaurant, right? And then I had to get out the door that got me to the parking lot. I had to get him in the parking lot, and he was still, I don't know if he was in a 5-point harness at that point, but he was still in a booster chair. And if you've ever had a child who's having a meltdown and kicking and screaming and they've already punched you in the head and you've had to pick them up, right? And I swear they turn into octopi in their arms, legs, whatever. What he did was he grabbed a hold of the frame of the door. So now I'm holding him, and I'm having to hold with one arm and pry his hands, but I get one hand off and try to move, and he'd have the other hand on. And I'd take and try to pry that hand off, and he'd get the other hand on. And I'm alone, and it's killing my back because he's too big, really, for me to be holding at that point. It was horrifying, right? So it looms large in my memory. And then I got him to the second door, same thing, and now everyone in the McDonald's is watching, like the manager's coming over going, what do you want me to do? And I said, honestly, just, give me some room, I'll have him out of here in a second. But then there was the whole to do in the parking lot. And my fear was somebody's going to see this and think that I'm a bad parent. And you know what I say always, other people's opinions of my parenting is none of my business. But like we were talking about yesterday, the Joshua Robb thing, I was afraid that somebody was then going to report me and say I was a bad parent and end up having Child Protective Services come and take my child away, because we've all heard those stories, right? So important that when you start to feel, maybe the first cue is when you feel the anxiety, that's your first cue that a meltdown is on the way for your child. When you feel like, oh no, I'm afraid there's a meltdown, that's the time when it's time to stop anything that you can. If there's any kind of sensory thing happening, if there's, put your attention to that so that you've got something to do. Let's say that you're in the car and they're starting to have a meltdown, and the first thing you can do is turn the radio off. Turn the radio off. Try to pull the car over. Nancy was talking about an event that she was at the other day that the mom showed up and her child had tried to get out of the car. So whatever, minimize as much as possible. There I was in the McDonald's, and my thought was get him out to the car. Easier said than done, right? What I could have done, and if I knew now what I knew, if I knew then what I know now, what I would have done was I would have sat with him really. I would not have tried to take him out of the place. I would have sat with him really quietly and said, let's take a minute, let's get inside one of the tubes and let's get it as quiet as possible, and then you and I are going to have a conversation about what's going on. But he was verbal then, but not crazy verbal. So important that we do anything we can to lower our anxiety so that we can deal with what's actually happening. And sometimes the reason why they're having a meltdown is because they don't feel like they're being heard and something is really off the tracks for them. Remember, there's always, almost always, a sensory component to a meltdown. So we dim whatever is happening sensory-wise, and we need to get still and try to listen. I always think about when we went to see Mystere in Las Vegas and the young girl who was in a wheelchair device and nonverbal, that she was parked there. Her parents had gotten in, they got their seats. There was plenty of time before the show, and she had a full-on meltdown. And it wasn't until they wheeled her wheelchair away that she immediately stopped. And I know they left and didn't come back. And I always felt bad about that because I strongly felt that she wanted something, whether it was a drink or to go to the bathroom. There was an urgency. And they were so freaked out about what we were thinking. Oh, it was horrifying and devastating to watch, and they didn't come back, and I know how much those tickets cost. So staying calm, get the sensory stuff as dim as possible. If it means turning off a light, removing something so that they can't hurt themselves or hurt somebody else. And then trying to think, what is it that they're trying to communicate? What is it that they wanted? Is there more to this story than I knew? Those are some great things to do. But if you feel the anxiety coming, that's your cue that you're picking up the cues that your child is probably getting ready to have a meltdown. And they make wristbands now that can help to determine that measure physiological changes in your child to determine whether or not they might be headed towards a meltdown. So we're out of time. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed today, and thank you so much for your input. We're out of time, but I want to tell you we've got a great show next week. We're going to be putting some flyers out about it because at the end of next week, in a show that we're going to be playing on Friday, we have one of the top advisors to the Clinton campaign who's going to be talking during a Future is Bright segment that we do, a show that we do with Autism Society of America about the Clinton plan for autism. That's happening on Friday, but we've got some amazing guests on Thursday. Dr. Dennis Dixon is going to be on the show for the first time. You're not going to want to miss it. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.